we're probably fantastic. So we're probably in different zones. I'm very excited to be with you, and thank you very much, Lars, for the introduction. And I've looked at your company and some of the speeches given by your CEO, and it's very exciting to be speaking with you. And the one thing that I think we need to focus on as we look at this session that's focusing on building growth, driving culture, and high impact teams is what I'm basically going to do is essentially ask every one of us. And I love the conversation you were having now about what if there was nothing in your way. And the one request I have for you is if we were just to...
We lost him again.
Yep. Yeah, 1 second.
Technology won't fail us. So the promise that we made about this session is the fact that we're going to be focusing a lot more on mindsets for leaders, really looking at how we think about things. And again, if we were to believe that we will be the team that makes all the difference, what are these key mindsets? So we're going to basically take a look at the very first mindset, which is the one that says, if it's to be, it's up to me, which really puts in our thinking the fact that we have a choice either to be the victim and talk about all the different issues that exist, which they'll continue to exist, and maybe they will become different ones, or have a responsible mindset that really says, if something's going to happen, I will be the one that wakes up in the morning and says, I got to take action today on this thing. And we'll take a look at a success blueprint called the Own It, Win It, Crush It Success Blueprint, which has a little bit of story behind it, and we'll look at that story together. The second mindset is the fact that we essentially say it's an abundant universe that we are living in, and there's a lot of potential abundance here at ABInbev and in the universe, and that also will drive our thinking and it will drive our action. We'll take a look at the concept of exponential value moments, what those mean for us as leaders, and the very last mindset is one which we basically call having an obsessive impatience mindset, which essentially means we got to get stuff done and we got to get stuff done fast. And the question is, what kind of tools do we have to help power that up for us? So we'll go ahead and essentially then make an argument. We're going to make an argument that if we essentially get these three empowering mindsets with three big ideas behind them and three action commitments behind them, we actually end up as individuals and as teams really getting 25 to 35% individual and team performance uplift. That's the promise that we as leaders will essentially walk out of this workshop having a sense of empowerment, a sense of we can make things happen. And if we embody a lot of these mindsets and make use of these ideas and the action commitments that we made, we're actually going to achieve those things. So it's really more about law of attraction that we accomplish those things. So we're going to jump into the very first section, the very first act. And it's about really developing a foundational philosophy similar to when I looked at your organization's culture and the values and key principles. The company has a set of values that you all uphold. And the same thing here for us as leaders. We have to be walking around on a daily basis having a foundational philosophy. So that's what we're going to be looking at. We're going to be looking at how each one of us needs to develop a brand that you on a daily basis really strive to protect. How do you uphold that brand? How do you build a legacy and leave it behind and make sure that people say, she was here, she made a difference. He was here, he made a difference for us. So we're looking at mindsets that power up Chief Excitement Officers. And some of you may be wondering, what is a Chief Excitement Officer? And it's very similar to how you're seeing me deliver what we're talking about today. It's the people that bring energy into the place. Whether it's a meeting, whether it's a project, whether it's a program. If you are in the room, it's a whole different story because you're bringing a lot of energy and bringing a lot of passion for what it is that you'll be doing. So we'll be breaking that down even a bit more. So I like to start with a quotation, and it's from Winston Churchill, and it basically talks about the importance of having a higher purpose and being ready for it. And he says, to each there comes in their lifetime a special moment, and for us, this could be the moment when they are figuratively tapped on the shoulder and offered the chance to do a very special thing, unique to them and fitted to their talents. What a tragedy if that moment finds them unprepared or unqualified for that which could have been their finest hour. We're working in this global organization, and I was actually surprised to find a very similar quotation from Carlos himself. He was speaking to an MBA program crowd, and he said, I think it's very sad for you to go through life since you only live once without knowing what your full potential can be. And that's why we like, as a company, ABInbev, we like to stretch people, because it's only when you take people out of their comfort zone that we all evolve. And that's essentially the key point that we're all trying to make with this whole new mindset. About if it's to be, it's up to me. And I want to share with you a story. How did I put this whole idea together? And I summarized it under this big banner of if it's to be, it's up to me. A few years ago, was working for a company called Deloitte & Touche in San Francisco. And it was my very first time getting exposed to management consulting. It was the best thing that has ever happened to me since, professionally, that is, right? So professionally, working for Deloitte & Touche, a management consulting company, was the best thing that happened to me. The question is why? Why is that the case? And it was because the very first day I went to work for Deloitte, my boss said, I don't want you to come to the office in San Francisco. I want you to go to San Francisco airport, go get on an airplane and go to our customer, which is Kaiser Permanente in Southern California. That's our customer, that's our client. And she said, when you go there, everybody in that building is our client, whether it's the receptionist, whether it's the president of the division, the directors, the VPs, anyone you touch is our client. And I walked away from Deloitte 2 years later to work at Oracle in Redwood Shores, California. And I remember standing at the door and saying to myself, even though I'm getting hired to work full-time here at Oracle, I'm actually going to think the same way I thought at Deloitte. I am going to look at everybody at Oracle as my client and deliver value for them, because the only way, they told me at Deloitte, the only way we can get more business is if you deliver value, and the same company would say, yes, Deloitte came here and they did a great job for us. So the main point about the success blueprint that I want to share with you is I really took everything that I saw at Deloitte. I took things that happened at Oracle, at Cisco, and I put all this together in a 3-step thinking process that gives us a success philosophy, a leadership philosophy. And it's about leading ourselves first. Sometimes we complain about somebody else at work or another team or another organization. But every moment you want to start complaining, I want you to start with you. I want you to start thinking about what could you do? And that's why I put these 3 steps together that focus on self-mastery, which we call own it, You own the issue, you own the day, you own what needs to happen. And the second one is about value creation, which we also call winning it, making sure that whatever it is we do for the company, whether it's supply chain management, whatever it might be, we just do a bang up job, the best one ever. That's what this is about. And of course, if we do one so well and we do two so well, number three is going to happen, and it's going to happen. We're going to crush it. We're going to crush it for InBev, and we're going to crush it for InBev's customers. And again, that's why I'm saying, just imagine if you walk away from this session today, having that mindset of, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen because you were there. You were part of the team that made it happen. So this is what we call the own it, win it, crush it success philosophy. You can call it leadership philosophy, and it's going to start making a lot more sense when we break it down even more. And in very simple terms, it's about really having that management consultant mindset. You walk in the meeting, you walk in the building, you walk into the Zoom, whatever it might be, you know you're there to serve a client, and everybody on that call is a client, whether it's your boss, your peer, whoever it might be. You represent a brand, everyone that you're working with, your client. The long-term view is much better than the short-term view, which means you don't get twisted out of order because somebody said something in that meeting. You deliver the highest quality work. You focus on making sure you have satisfied customers, because that's the only way it's going to lead you to more customers. That mindset is just a game changer for a lot of people. I use it in my coaching with leaders in several companies, and it usually shifts the game for them. Because a lot of the time you kind of get stuck. I'm working for InBev. I don't like this. I don't like that. But once you say to yourself, I don't work for nobody. I work for me. And I love the fact that when I looked at your culture, it talks about this whole concept of ownership. We have this, you think like owners. And I was like, oh my God, thank goodness. You already have that as part of your philosophy. So when we bring the detail level for the own it, win it, crush it, it comes down to having those mindsets, a responsible mindset, an abundance mindset, a consultative mindset. That forms your own philosophy. That's going to give you that. If it's to be, it's up to me every single day. Every single day it's going to be, if it's to be, it's up to me. What can I do? Oh my God, he didn't send me the meeting invite. Forget it, forget about it. You send the meeting invite, you get the work done. That's what this one is about. The second one is about making sure that you yourself have a brand standard. InBev have its own brand. You say, how can I be a representative of that brand? And even better, if I do supply chain management for InBev, I need to make sure I do it so well. That's what differentiated service offer is all about. And every time people touch me, I talk to them, I work with them, I want them to walk away knowing this is a memorable experience. If you've got this lady on your project, you are in heaven. If you've got this guy on your project, you are in heaven, because these are the people who act proactively. They take action, and at the very end, they are focused passionately on creating the customer success fact that they know if they do it so well, other departments in the company are going to come to you and say, you do this so well, we want you to do it with us. We want you to do it for us and with us. And that's how we end up getting new business. And you win the business every day. You don't take it for granted. You don't say, I've been here for 15 years, no problem. No. Every single day you basically say, I gotta win this business. I want to win the InBev business every day. Even though I'm a full-time employee, I'm actually doing this in a very passionate way. So there's a lot more detail. I want to be conscious of our time, because we have 90 minutes. I want to make sure we get a chance to apply some of these ideas. This is just a quick breakdown on that responsible mindset, which in my mind could be the one nugget today that you walk away with that's going to change your life. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. If every day you say, what can I do today? You're going to make a difference. And that's the key word. How can you make a difference every single day? You accept responsibility. You feel extremely strong. You have a lot of energy. You have a lot of power. You've got what you need. You control your own destiny. And every day you're going to say, well, I'm coming up against the wall. I'm coming up against the wall. Yes, you're going to come up against the wall. Yes, you will. Develop your negotiation skills, your communication skills. Get up on the Zoom. Make the case. Persuade, convince. Get people to believe in you on your case, because once they feel that you're so passionate about what it is you want to do, in many cases, they're like, I got to get out of his way. I got to get out of her way. And I need to let them do what they want to do. Just your energy may actually change the situation. So we developed the consultative mindset. I talked about how everybody is a client. We manage our own development. We manage our client relationship. Again, here the word client for you means anybody you work with, everyone around you is your client. Very critical component is to think that way. And you represent your own brand. The long-term view trumps the short-term view. All of these ideas are just essentially coming from the fact that you look at yourself as somebody who is a management consultant, who's there to add value. So the question for you would be, just imagine what would happen. What would happen if you kick it up a notch or two? What would this look like in real life? What would it mean to your daily schedule? How will you plan ahead? How would you plan for your own success and for others' success? Because remember, once you think the way we're talking about, it's going to be, again, a different ball game, because once you are in the meeting, people are going to know it's different. It's a different meeting. It's a different meeting, because that's what happens when you hire a consultant and they know they are charging you hundreds of dollars for every hour they are with you on the phone. They are always constantly thinking, everybody on the phone knows I'm a consultant. They know I get paid so much money, or the company I work for gets paid so much money. I have to deliver value. So we get this whole way, own it when it, crush it idea, and we need to bring it together into one big concept, and that concept from Tom Peters, where he basically says, after working for McKinsey for many years, he basically says, if every one of us sees themselves as a professional service firm of one, when you are a management consultant, you work for yourself, you have your own business. That means you're going to wake up in the morning, market that business, get the business done, invoice the customer, do the marketing, the whole 9 yards. So the idea of running your business, running your department, running your team as a professional services firm changes the game, because again, you're going to have to think about not just doing the work, but actually marketing the work, speaking about your success, making sure people know this, the work you've done, and also the work that other people on the team have done. And again, the fascinating thing happened when I looked at your principles, and look what it says here. We are a company of owners. If we were to embody this, that means we take results personally and we lead by example. We are so much aligned. If we think like a management consultant, we think like Tom Peters, and we basically say, every one of us is a professional service firm of one, that means we will be in line with the fact that this company is a company of owners. And when you have that mindset, you're going to start saying, well, what service do we provide? What is our services portfolio? What does the group that you are in offer the rest of the company? And are you doing it so well that if a consultant knocks on the door for ABInbev, is ABInbev going to say, you know what, our team has got it and they're doing such a fabulous job that we don't want any consultant to come in and do this job? So once we think as a professional services firm, the only way we can win more business is for us to do what we do so well that no one else can come and take our place. That's what this is about. And part of your homework, if you were to maybe take some notes about whatever services you're doing today, you need to think about, do we need to think about those services? Do we need to think about upgrading those services or upgrading how we do those services for the company? Do we need to go talk to our stakeholders and talk to them about what we're doing today and what they want us to do better? How many times have you gone and asked that question? Would be an important question to ask. So as you can see here, we're kind of keeping the pace very fluid and very fast. What I want to do next is, given everything that I talked about, maybe the best thing we should do now is versus, instead of going into the breakout rooms themselves, I would like to pause and maybe just get some reactions from you, just to make sure we are making sense. Some of this is resonating with you. If you think what we're talking about is useful so far or not. So I'd love for you to open up your mic, just make a few comments just to make sure I am in line with what you're thinking about. Any reactions from you?
Yeah, look, I really like the idea, right, with the 3 different points. Can you go into some little details then on like the services portfolio, right? Because you got your physical things that your teams do, but like mindset wise, and how does that look?
Absolutely. So the piece about the services is, let's say we're providing supply chain management for a company.
Yeah.
A lot of the time people don't go and ask the stakeholders how we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Are the things we're doing in line with what you want or not? Because sometimes you just go in and you do the same thing. It's been 15 years we've been doing the same thing. So the point here is to actually think as a management consultant. You take a notebook with you like this one. And the idea would be for you to go and talk to that client internally and say, hey, you know what? We've been working together for so long. I want to check in and see if the stuff that we're doing is still in line with what you're looking for. And maybe we're doing it so well, but you would like us to tweak it. You'd like us to improve it. What would that look like? So that's the idea of the services portfolio, because if I work in finance, my services is finance. If I work in, customer success, that's what I'm doing. So the whole idea of services portfolio is to really think as a consultant and on a regular basis, do the check-in. Go to that stakeholder and say, hey, I just want to check in and see how we're doing. Because a lot of the time they develop perceptions. You never go to ask. They never tell anybody. They make different decisions. And all of a sudden you're out of that internal connection. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Other reactions?
I think I like to pile up on what Dan was saying. I like the idea, and I think it's not only a service as such, but maybe a business. So if we understand our group, be it the international or whatever team that we have, and we frame it as this is a business rather than a department or an area or a function. We deliver this to our internal customers or to our customers and such. For us in international, if we frame it as we are a business unit that contributes, that a profit center, if you will, that generates a different level of passion within the team. And that gets things done, I think.
Absolutely. Because that's how companies looked at IT as a cost, and they basically said, maybe we go to Infosys and see if they can give us the whole package for less cost. So to your point, I think if we act this way every day, we act like we don't really have this as a given, because a lot of people take stuff for granted. And I think the point you're making is, every day I need to say to myself and my team, we should never act like InBev is going to take us for granted or what we do for granted. So every day we're going to do the best we can to win their business. Every day.
Exactly, and that's there's an analogy that Brito says usually in the NCPs, etc., in LPC, sorry, is that it's easier to see it in sales. Every single day we have to win the customers, because every single day our sales book is 0. We start at 0 and then we start selling.
Yes.
And then every single day we start at 0 cases delivered and we start delivering them. So we have to win out. The way our business works, it's a day-to-day thing that we have to keep on doing, otherwise we lose.
Exactly.
And if we adopt that mindset, that goes throughout the organization, not only sales and operations. We have to win it every single day.
Yes, totally. And I believe if the group of people here in the room today walk out of this meeting as a management consultant, the very first thing you want to do is be very empathetic first, because if we go in with a chip on our shoulder, people will essentially not come along. So what we want to do, we want to become almost like evangelists first. So first you want to go and very softly say, here's what we want to do. Here's how we need to think differently. Because I think a lot of what we're talking about is going to create change. And you'll see more about, as we cover this, how do we talk about all those things that we want to do? Given the fact that people are going to initially, in many cases, resist change. So with everything that we talked about, I'd love to give you as a group time. I think if I look at the number of people, we have about maybe 20 or so people. So maybe it's like about four groups of 5 or so. And I'd like you to pick one of these topics and talk about in your group. So it could be the portfolio of services discussion where, given what we talked about, how do you think your portfolio of services might change? The second one is more about the strength of the strategic relationships that you need to do. So the question in the group would be, how strong are those relationships, and how do we need to go and have further discussions to check in with those stakeholders? Because a lot of the time when I'm coaching, I do find that one of the weakest links is the fact that we don't go out enough to do those check-ins. And the last topic is opportunities to work better as a team and across the organization. How can some of those ideas we discussed so far make a shift on how we function as a team as well? So that's what I'd love for us to do. And I think I'm not seeing the breakout room functionality. Oh, here we go.
I'm opening them right now.
Okay, fantastic. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Of course. And let me put, actually, what room you are? So let me move.
For some reason, we were brought back to the main session.
You should be in the room too, Miguel.
Yeah, okay. But I didn't press anything, and I was just redirected here.
Okay. Let me maybe put you in the different group and see how it is. Okay.
Okay.
Do you see anything?
Yes,
Anything?
yes, I see. I will.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, awesome.
Welcome back.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. So let's do a quick regroup. So how about we go to the room 3, who had the Camilla, Daniel, Elise, and Xavier. What did you discuss? Which topic did you discuss? And just give us a little bit more of the feedback so we can all hear, and then we can move forward.
I guess I will go. So we talked kind of about all of them in a way, but mainly about the services, right? And then we discussed like what are the services of our team, and we kind of broke it down to what our basic services, delivering things at the lowest landed cost with the best service level, etc. And then we started kind of brainstorming on how we could more centralize the approach and provide a better service for the company overall instead of just zone by zone or business unit by business unit. And then we continued from there, and we ran out of time. It was a good discussion though.
That's awesome. Yeah, this would usually be like the very first step. And I'd love for you to make a note, of course, about let's pull the team together. pull the team together, take the idea and say, you know, I was attending the training, here's what came up. I'd love to flush it out with the team a bit more. That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing. Other teams that might want to share?
Maybe I could share from our team. So
Sure.
we had
But-
actually, we started with the second point, which is like strategic relationships, more long-term relationships, looking on their relationship between the zones, who is producing and serving our clients, international clients, and where we have not always the good relationship or the same view from the priority perspective. And then we moved and we like naturally jumped to the first topic because we start to discuss, but look, what is our list of the services we could propose to these clients and to other clients as well, which we could gain out of. As an example of, like, we start to work with the materials, this cans flow and bottles flow. They also might have certain interest to leverage with us, which we can use in order to build more like long-term relationship. And also we discussed a bit, of course, to have not such a contradictional target setting sometimes would help us to build long-term relationships as well. That's maybe something which we could be also focused on for the future.
That's fantastic. And as you can see, large companies now having customer success teams. Imagine if somebody on your team became that customer success internal customer, right? Internal client success manager. And that person owns the relationship so much that they actually become the voice of the customer on the team. And of course, in order to do so, they have to talk to the customer repeatedly, to your point, and have a discussion on here's what we're doing, here are some of the things that we could potentially do, and get some responses from the customer and continue to do that on a regular basis. It's going to be fantastic. So again, you know, take a lot of these ideas as a starting point to schedule time post our discussion today to take it to the next level. We'll do a quick recap. If you remember, we started to really focus on this whole idea. If it's to be, it's up to me. Would love for you to take the idea, share it with your team members, and say, if every one of us does the same thing, and if we do it as a team, then similar to what Olga said, what kind of action can we take? How can we think about what we're doing and think about shifting it? The big idea, of course, is to have a success philosophy that says we're going to create success for ourselves, individuals, as a team, as well as for InBev and its internal organizations by us adopting that philosophy. And then the action commitment that we all want to do is to take what we covered today in this section and cover it with your team members so they have the same thought process. We'll make sure you get the deck. You could use it to help kind of cascade the same ideas with your teams as well. So that was the first idea. We want to make sure we continue to think about how do we apply a lot of those things. So I just want to give you 1 minute for you at least to jot down what you will do with this part post the training.
Just one quick thought about what you would do after that training with that philosophy. Own it.
Yeah,
win it,
just
crush it.
Just for them to at least make a commitment to take some action post this. So we'll count on the fact that they are doing this as we speak. And the second big idea is really centering around the fundamental mindset. And that mindset says it's an abundant universe. There is so much more that we could do. There's so much more goodness. There's so much more business. There's so much more opportunity for every one of us, for our teams, for InBev and its customers and the universe. And the main point here is the fact that we start with a given fact that there is a lot of goodness already happening. And it all comes down from enjoying and celebrating the fact that as human beings, we're able to imagine. So imagination, that's a quotation from Albert Einstein. Imagination is everything. It's the preview of life's coming attractions, which means if we were to, again, assume that the universe is abundant and we can start imagining how we can take our department, our service portfolio, our internal clients, our customers, and think about how can we create a much better game than the one we are playing today. And it's all going to come down to us believing in abundance, and number two, believing in the value of imagination. So as we think about this, what I usually do when I do this in a workshop, in a room, the very first thing we say, you know what, let's pick a destination, and let's say we're going to do that kind of activity, and we start thinking about how do you develop some description of what kind of experience you want to have. So we start envisioning, right? We start envisioning, like here in California, when we are in California, there's a place called Yosemite, and it's a national park. There's wonderful mountains, waterfalls, and we start thinking about who's going, how we're going to go, what kind of food we're going to eat, are we going to stay at a hotel or a cabin? I mean, you can imagine all the different things we'll think about, and then we start to converge on a particular vision for what we want to do, what we want to accomplish. What starts to happen for us as leaders is that our bodies, our minds, our psychology, our whole being starts to travel in time to Yosemite. And some of us, we do this so well with our brains and our minds, we start standing in front of the waterfalls mentally. And that's part of this whole idea of chief excitement officers. If we as leaders start envisioning what we want to see, and we go talk to people on our team and we say, I've been thinking, I think we could do this, we could do that. What do you guys think? And you start to actually have them share with you their own vision, how this trip is going to look like, what kind of waterfalls they want to see. You start to work with them on what that vision is. And you're starting from a standing point of the fact that there is a lot of goodness that already exists. And I found this idea or concept called appreciative inquiry. And this idea basically says, we live in a world our questions create. We live in a world our questions create. And this idea in very simple terms means any company, there is a lot of goodness in that company already. People have a lot of experience. They achieved a lot of success. And when you start from that perspective, then the next question would be, how can we kick it up a notch? How can we take it to the next level? How can we create even more value? So we come to these 4 bullet points that we use to essentially shape our thinking when we use this idea of appreciative inquiry, when we go around the company looking for opportunities that we can create value. So we think about asking questions and asking questions, even the simplest of questions. Ask our friends who know nothing about ABInbev to ask us questions, because they may even ask us questions that we haven't thought about, because these questions determine the results we achieve. So the bigger questions that we ask, potentially we can achieve more potential with those bigger questions. So the more positive our questions is going to be, the more it will create. We all have in our lives, and sometimes I myself am a very pessimistic person sometimes, although it would be very rare to find me being pessimistic. But you know what, we go back and forth. What this is telling us, it's telling us if we want to create value, we're going to have to be positive first. And it's not that we're going to exclude the fact that there are risks and someone might fall and hurt their knee or even die, you know, on this trip. All these risks exist. Of course they exist. But we want to start first by asking the positive question, because these questions are going to help us create movement and change. So that's what I would love you to take away from this section. The whole idea of starting with the positive questions, because it's a paradigm shift. I can be in the problem solving side, looking at causes and leading with answers and blaming people and talking about how we are divided and how we have a lot of problems, analyzing possible solutions, looking from a top-down approach, or I can appreciate what's already working. Can you imagine if I go to my team and say, let me first start by what's working. I want to say thank you. I want to really appreciate everything you're doing. And you know what? I think there's some more we could do. And I just wondered, what questions do you guys have? What else can we do? How can we own it more? How can we collaborate more? How can we envision what might be? And then open up the conversation. Let's leverage the positive. And there's a lot of, literature about the whole idea of focusing on our strengths. And I think it is a complementary idea to this idea of appreciative inquiry. Because a lot of people, again, start talking about the problems. They don't start talking about what's possible. And that's what appreciative inquiry is about. There's a lot more about it, but I just want to give you a few nuggets. There's what's called the 5D cycle. We have to start by defining what we are after. And again, here we could be looking at the services we provide, the solutions we provide, the products we provide. We have to define what we want to accomplish. And then the very first thing we do is, you know what? We're going to appreciate the best of what is. The team we have, the people on that team, we want to tell them, we love what you're doing. You guys are amazing, but you know what? Let's dream together. And I love what Olga has in her background. She's the dream. I love the fact that as a company, you dream big. That's part of what you are saying as part of your principles. And that's the dream part, is what could be. We need to imagine. And we need to do this on a quarterly basis, every 6 months. You need to get together with your team and say, we need to start thinking about how can we dream even better. And then we start designing what we want to accomplish, what should be. What can happen, again, whether it's the services we provide or something else. And then eventually we think about that new destiny. What will that destiny be? What will it be? And at the center of the diagram is the heart pumping, positive core that's going to be driving this appreciative inquiry mindset, because we know however much success we've achieved, if it's an abundant universe, that means there's a whole lot more that we could accomplish. And of course, we're bearing in mind who our hero is. It could be the next door department. It could be the next door team. It could be somebody else all the way in Latin America, or somebody in Europe, or somebody in Asia. We need to think and be very obsessed with who that target is. It could be a business process. It could be a group, right? So we need to think about how we can create exponential value, much better than we have today. We need to get very clear on who that target is and what their aspirations are. And as we were speaking earlier, we got to talk to them. A lot of the time, we're not talking to them. We want to have regular touch points with them. If we think of ourselves as management consultants and everybody is a client, then you have to have client one-on-one meetings. What all you're doing is saying, you know what, I'm not going to have any assumptions. How are we doing? What's working? What's not working? What could we do better? And you do this once a month at least, 30 minutes. It's going to change everybody's life. Is just do that check-in. Go ask them, how are things going? I want to be honest with you. I learned something today about InBev when I heard Carlos talking about this idea of an insurgent mindset. So if I promised you 3 mindsets, if you already know about the insurgent mindset, you're good. If you don't, that means you're going to walk away with 4 mindsets, right? So insurgent mindset, I love it. And what he talks about here is that if you never lose that insurgent mindset, you should always avoid becoming the incumbent, the guy or the lady that's always praying for no change. No change, just keep things the way they are. That's always saying our changes are bad. That's terrible. He says you should be that insurgent, that guy that's the market leader, but is always changing so that you're always reinventing the industry. That's what Carl's talking about. I'm sure Michel also will be embodying a lot of that. as he comes in, right? In a couple of weeks. So the question is, I got curious and I went to Google and I said, what is an insurgent mindset? And I found that Bain Company, which is another management consulting company, they are the ones that essentially kind of crystallize the idea. And the insurgent mindset is the mindset where people see themselves as founders. And again, that's why I love the fact that you guys are owners. As a principle, as a value, when you have that founder's mentality, you're always thinking, how can I continue on my mission of looking for better and better and better solutions and doing things better and serving my customers better. So that's what that mindset is about. And we bring it here because if we get into that abundance mindset, that means we're always going to be looking for opportunities to create value. There's a lot of innovation that can happen, whether it's a business process or the way we get things done as a team, how we receive the request from a different team, how we receive that request. There's a lot to be said about how the request comes in and how do we receive it as a new baby? And how do we turn around and give it to the team to get it done? So even a business process can be the target of innovation, or could be a piece of software that we need to build so we can have much better visibility into the supply chain. If and when you do any of that stuff, you're going to create tension. That's what Carlos was talking about. There would be people who say no change, because no change means no tension. Things will happen the way they are happening. But your organization is all about insurgent mindset. They want you to be constantly self-renewing and self-rebuilding. And I ended up building this idea of the tension index, which means as a leader, if you think of one idea, if you go to the manager next door, the department next door, highly likely you guys have some common targets, things that are causing pain on a daily basis. Maybe it's a business process, maybe it's the way we're working together, or the fact that the customer is asking for something and we don't have the tools to do it. So the tension index is about coming together and looking at all the different issues we have and then putting them in common buckets. Because this way, instead of just focusing on a problem in a single department, we need to see this problem at an organizational level as much as we can. Because that's how we're going to get a lot more sponsorship from the company. If we can present the problem, not just as a small department problem, but it's a bigger one, it's a bigger opportunity, right? So we flip it when we talk about it, we say it's an opportunity because we can create a lot of value for the organization. So the tension index is, if you see an opportunity, talk to other people, find out how much you can bring some common issues together so we can tackle them together, get funding for them, and we have a much bigger case for change. That's what the tension index is about. The other thing that starts to happen when we are talking from an abundance mindset is we're not going to be trying to find one right answer. We will be open to the fact that there could be a lot more answers. So we start to encourage every one of us to have what we call both and language. So if somebody says something, we say to them, and we can do this as well. You are right. So that becomes part of the conversation as well. So as you can see here on the left, either or language means there's only one right answer. When you are right, the others who disagree with you are wrong. But in a both and word, there is more than one right answer. And when you are right, those who disagree may also be right. So that's that mindset of abundance. It's the mindset of being an insurgent, where you're always saying, I'm not going to accept the status quo. How can I reinvent what I'm doing as an individual, as a team, as a company? Because that's how we're going to stay ahead of everybody else and not become an incumbent, as Carlos has said. So before we get into an opportunity to apply these ideas, let me pause again and see your reflections on what you heard so far in this section. How do you see it working for you? Was the insurgent mindset something you knew already about? I can't see the names.
So personal from my perspective, I think that when you're working on the project, it's much easier to communicate the vision than to communicate something that is in general some technical terms. And I think, Olga, we have been discussing the control tower, right? Is one thing is to say, oh, we're just going to put every system together and just trying to do something, and then we'll add this and we'll add that. And it's much easier to say, imagine that you are driving from work and you get a question from the CEO of the region, and then you can just log in from your phone, find where that particular container is, and give the link to the CEO so they can poke around and see where it's happening. So I think, like, in my opinion, and working again with a lot of our clients, that was one of the easiest and the most impactful things, is that it's much easier to communicate the vision than trying to communicate the lingo.
Exactly, absolutely. What do you think, Barbara or Camilla?
From my perspective, actually, this is what we need to make sure that we are applying the both end, right? Because in a lot of projects or any discussion, what I liked, it was the analogy that look at as an artist, right, from different angles, and you need to take the perspective of the others. And even though maybe we think that we are really right, so actually the advice or the idea from the others, there can be the direction that we didn't even think before. And still we need to take into the consideration. So, but it's a lot of link to the mindset about the leadership skills, how we can get the best out of the people, those different angles of the thinking.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Just being open to listening first, because a lot of the time we get blocked out by what we have thought, and then we think there's only one way, but there could be other ways. Go ahead, Miguel.
Yes, and also I was going to say that it's very linked to this both thinking with inclusion, no? Because we have been talking about taking into consideration other people's mindset, other approaches, other ideas, no? To be open, to have a more constructive team, no? Because, and then that's adds up. And then that came to my mind when I was reading it.
It's a great point, yes. Kind of having, I was working with the team at Salesforce, and we were talking about this idea of psychological safety. Good point, Miguel. Definitely, it is the idea of inclusion where you allow people to speak their mind, and that's what's interesting when I was talking about Yosemite, and when you travel mentally to the vision of where you want to go. Sometimes as leaders, you start actually developing some impatience, and that might cause you to shut other ideas out. So it's something to basically think about your own chemicals in your own body, because if you mentally have traveled, you will get a little bit impatient with people because you're already seeing what should happen, and you think it should be very clear to everybody. And that's why in the next section we will be looking at what you need to do to communicate a lot of those things. And so I want us to, yes.
How about just being cautious of time? We have about 25 minutes left, but I do have a breakout session at the end that I can give to you, so we can have like 35 minutes left. So how about I suggest we go to the next session and do the last breakout about the quick about the Chief Excitement Officer, and then we can, if we have time, we might use it later.
Definitely. So in terms of just the recap for this one is, remember, it's an abundant universe. Imagination is everything. Appreciative equality, we talked about it. And I think remembering the positive core and appreciating the best of what is, this is going to help you in a big way. So as Vlas said, we're going to get into this third part, which is about, as leaders, and give, what I was just talking about a minute ago, the idea of strategic leadership communications. As leaders, we need to be aware of the fact that the toughest job for us is going to be communicating. And the book that I co-wrote on meaning, it was all about leadership communications. And in this section, what we're doing is, the mindset is about being obsessively impatient And we talked about what can actually happen negatively if we're not aware of our impatience. But at the same time, there is also a positive side to being obsessively impatient, which we will talk about what we mean by the positive side of being obsessively impatient. But let's start first by saying, as leaders, we need to use some tools that are going to help us communicate. And the very first tool is one that will help us really achieve organizational clarity, which means you as a leader need to take some of the tools in this part and work with your team, and maybe even go and talk to your peers to make sure there is some clarity on why do we exist. These are 6 questions from a book called The Advantage by a gentleman by the name of Patrick Lencioni, well known on a number of leadership topics. So the first question is, why do we exist? And I think this is a question where you can take it with your team and try to get an answer. Why do we exist in our own shape and form within the company? How will we succeed is a good question, whether it's short-term, long-term. How do we behave? And I think this would be a point where, similar to what Miguel was saying now, he was also looking at the backdrop of the company's values, and then come back and say, as a team, how do we want to behave? If we were to adopt the own it, win it, crush it mindset, how would that look like in our daily interactions, when we write emails, when we answer other people on a meeting, like on a Zoom and so forth? What is most important right now? So at least people have a sense of what you want them to focus on. What do we do? You know, what is the exact definition of the services portfolio? Our reason for being in the company, and who must do what? Do we have clarity on what each one of us does? So these 6 questions are one of the very first tools that we would focus on. Then the second one is about developing some questions around the choices that we need to make. And that's another tool we get from a book called Playing to Win by A.J. Lafley, who used to be the CEO of Procter & Gamble, and a very well-known strategy professor, Roger Martin. And these 5 questions on the screen tell us that we can use them as leaders, number one, to help clarify for ourselves how we are going to win as a company or as a department. What is our winning aspiration? What is the one thing we want to achieve? How will we play is similar to how will we behave, right? But it's really more about how we are going to show up in our interactions. How will we win when we have chosen to play? That's important. So is supply chain management going to become the most amazing engine within the company that makes life so much better, not just for everybody at InBev, but everybody that does business with InBev? How can we make that happen? What capabilities must be in place to win? That's a good question for leaders, where you're going to look at the team, you're going to look at the skills, you're going to look at the talents, you're also going to look at the tools, the software, everything that you're using, and ask yourself this question strategically: are there other things that we need to do in order to be better and get more ready? What management systems are required to ensure the capabilities are in place? These questions are important to use on a regular basis to make sure that you are also setting your whole team for success. Now we come to the part that Vlas was talking about, the part about chief excitement officers. And I developed a model called courageous leadership. It really nets down very simple idea. And it's the idea that you remember your own leaders in the company. Sometimes they get on a Zoom and they spend 15, 20 minutes with you and the team, and they talk to you about what's going on. And they tell you a story, and you walk out of that meeting feeling fired up. Like, I want to be part of this company for the long term. And I understand why we need to change, and I understand what I need to do. That's what exponential value moments is about. I am basically telling that you as a leader have an opportunity from time to time to really fire people up. But in order to fire people up, you gotta fire yourself up first, which means, Vlas was telling me right before he came from the break house, he was telling me about the fact that he actually used to be a professional athlete. And this idea of, if you're an athlete, you know what you need to do to get yourself energized, to get yourself in shape. The same thing applies here. If you're going to be the person that gets people excited, you're going to have to get excited first, right? And I love this quotation from Art Williams. He's got a lot of videos on YouTube. This is an amazing story of entrepreneur. Almost everybody in America can stay excited for 2 or 3 months. A few people can stay excited for 2 or 3 years, but a winner will stay excited for 30 years or however long it takes to win. And that's part of the mindset that we want to develop, whereby you yourself know, in order for people to get anything done, they need to get excited. And the second thing would be to remain excited. So you as a leader know that in order for us to create that excitement and make sure people will continue to do what we want them to do, we need to become chief excitement officers, in the sense that we see the vision, we need to be talking about that vision every day. We need to talk about how exciting it is. And of course, you see what I wrote down here, and I mentioned this idea before. It's not to the exclusion of other types of leaders. We need to be looking at the risks and the pitfalls and understand what those are, and be honest about them and transparent about them. But you know what's missing most of the time are people who are excited most of the time, every single day, have a lot of energy, and they energize everybody up. You have some people like that in your life that you have seen. You remember them by name because when they were in the room, they brought a lot of energy in the room. You got energized by the time you left the room, you will do a whole lot more. Just think about the uplift, maybe 25% more, 35% more. Every one of you has a percentage that you can say. When I was with this lady in the room and I got excited about the project she was working on, I think I probably gave the company 50% more. Right? Or 40% more. So I think it's important to remember these moments, because these moments, when you heard people talking about the initiative, that's essentially what we call the exponential value moment. Because if somebody leaves that meeting feeling inspired for action, they feel much more energized. It's not going to be the salary that they're getting or the stocks that they're getting. It's going to be the fact that this guy, whether it's Michelle or Carlos or someone else, talking about where we want to be as a company, and they leave the room so energized that you're going to get from them an uplift in performance. And that's what's key. You're also going to get from them, I want to stay here. You're also going to get from them, I want to attract other people for the company. So if you think in terms of EVMs, which means every time you get in a meeting as a leader, there's a big responsibility that you have, which is people are listening to you, and they look at you because you are in that position, that you are one of the people representing Michelle and representing Carlos and other people, and everything you say has a whole lot more weight. So what we want you to do is to go in this room, really see yourself in that light, and understanding that you need to focus on how you are going to change their energy. So that's why we take the tension index, the T in this diagram, which stands for tension. We start thinking about how does that tension inspire us? That's the inspiration, that's the I part. And then we take that inspiration and we focus more on how much excitement we're going to be able to create. And we wrap it up in passion, because Maya Angelou talks about people are going to forget what you said. But if you make them feel excited about the project, they're going to leave that meeting with that excitement. And you can connect, of course, with your audience by telling them a story about what your cemetery will look like, what the waterfalls will look like. Help them really see the vision where InBev is going to be, or this department that you're in is going to be a year from now, 6 months from now, and why that's going to be exciting. So that's in a nutshell what that whole idea of a chief excitement officer is about. People want to feel that you as a leader are going places. They want to feel like you're going somewhere. I mean, you have some intention. And you've been there with other leaders where you said, I want to work with this lady, I want to work with that guy. And that's really where, if you can become that person, I'm sure so many of you are already, that's really what we want to achieve. So with all this in mind, I hope there's something exciting, Vlas, that we can use for the breakout, where they are going to essentially look at one key initiative that they want to achieve in the next 6 months or so. They're going to say what it is, and maybe they will share maybe 3 exciting points that they can come up with about, or maybe there is a story that they want to use to talk to people about that initiative and how important it's going to be or maybe there is a metaphor. I apologize for the typo here, but maybe there is a metaphor that they could use. I shared the story about Deloitte. I showed you the story about Yosemite, how I can use this to develop a vision. You can come up with a different story as well. And we can just use this as a small example of what could happen post this training with your teams.
So how many people per room do we want?
I think if we break them in 3 breakouts, and maybe in each breakout a couple of people will do this, because I know we don't have enough time for everybody to do it. So I'm sure hopefully there will be a couple of volunteers in each group.
Okay, so let me break like to 6 groups, so that will be approximately 3 participants per group.
Fantastic. And of course, if there are questions on the floor, we can address them first.
Yeah, let's wait. So do you have any questions about what we said about the excitement and the emotions and everything that goes into that?
What was your reaction to what you heard from me on this section? Let's see here. Maybe we go to.
Balas, you want to mute? You want to share?
Yes, yeah. I mean, if everyone can think about that one, I don't know if you still remember what Ash explained in the beginning, but I still remember, the way how he explained. And I think that's a bit your message, right? So in many cases, it's more how you explain something than necessarily the content. I also recall some of the content, but I think the way how you explain that's something which can make also different in the long term. And I think that's the message, what I understood as well, based on the previous slides.
Yes. You have to be excited about it first. Great point, Balas. How about you, Fanny or Franco? I'm trying to see all the names, but I'm not able to.
Come on, don't be shy.
Ivana, and who else? Ingo, Jose.
If I may say something,
Yes.
Ash was thinking about what is the mindset of the company. That we are very focusing gap closing, problem analysis, root cause analysis, what is fixing things, And then I was thinking about what you said about focus in what is working, in reinforcing what is working and give the positive message. That's something that maybe we could be also focus more,
Oh, I love that. Yeah, because I looked at the survey you shared, a lot of the information you shared in the questionnaire. There are a lot of issues, of course. But anybody, at least I don't know about people on the call, but at least for me, I love for people to start with what's working first, because then you get my attention. Because a lot of people shut out once you start talking all the stuff that's not working. So that way you basically tell them, we are here because you got us here, and we would not be able to achieve more unless we come together again as a team and win another round. Yes, there will be challenges, so as a leader, you acknowledge, yes, it's not going to be rosy. And you can share a story about, how you face difficulties and challenges, or maybe that same team faced difficulties and challenges, but that same team made it to the other side. They achieved success. And you could talk like this because then they can see, oh my God, he knows this is not going to be easy. He knows. He's not up in the sky in a cloud. No, he realizes, you know what, this is not going to be easy because everything we're talking about is going to create change. So we need to be talking about the idea of change leadership and change management. And people see that as leaders, you recognize what you're asking is going to create change.
Yep.
Any others? Laura, Ivana, anyone? Okay, Blas, I think they're ready.
All right, awesome. I'm opening the room.
Fantastic.
Welcome back, everyone. So how about we share some of those things that we want to achieve in the next 6 months, and what would be some of the 3 talking points or story or metaphor that you would use to convince that, to excite people to do that better? Okay, I'm just gonna nominate the room 3. There is a Franco and Ingo in it. So would you mind sharing what you have discussed and what talking points you had?
Yeah.
You want to go, Franco?
Okay, I can go ahead. I mean, we discuss about it's very work related because we talk about implementing our export cross docs, which we would get excited about that. The difficult part is the 3 talking points to get excited about, because there are a lot of things that are negative on that business case. But you know, like, I think it's we need to implement it to support the importers, but it has a lot of negative impact on North America. So, and then the other, yeah, I mean that's the main thing. We discussed about other 2 projects that are also things that we want to implement moving forward. But yeah, I don't know, Ingo, if you have any other point.
Yeah.
No, I
Awesome.
think there's a lot of things we can improve. The weight per shipment is good for financials, good for environment, is good for capacity. So there are still a lot of opportunities we can explore and where we can excite people about it. If you have multiple positive factors, then it's easy. Some projects are more difficult, others are quite easy to excite people.
Yeah, although now now that I see below, like the mindset number 3, obsessive impatience, I don't know, like if the goal was to have more like a, I don't know, like a general, right? Like, what do you want to change, way of working or like methodology or?
I can I jump?
Please.
Please, Jose,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I think that going back to the thinking of talking points, I think of some, so which is we have a responsibility as a team. Our products are very important for the strategies at the importing zone, so we have to do what's best for the service level as a whole. And now we're living in a context in which the world is disrupted every single day, and because of that, we need some sort of reliability and buffer. That's why we're doing initiatives such as this crossdock that will give us space to, even though we don't have a carrier or a ship or a truck or whatever, we will be able to read there. If we do this, we believe, and it's not being naive about BLC, but we believe that we will be serving our customers more. And in the end, that's the reason for us, that's the reason of our existence, right? So I can think of, you have to frame it from the positive angle. Otherwise, you would not be doing that initiative, right? So because it sounded a bit like, no, we have to do it because we're asked to. No, we are doing it because we need to, which is different. I don't know if that makes sense.
Absolutely. One of the things that I do when I sometimes I actually write speeches or work with leaders to write speeches like this, where we need to acknowledge the fact that we have choices. One of the choices is to do nothing. But then you can then come back and say, just imagine if we did nothing, what would happen? So people can realize sometimes there is an absolute imperative for change. So you need to at least get them thinking about what would happen if we sat down, did nothing. And of course, that's not going to be fun because everybody's going to suffer eventually. And then you start talking to them about what are some of the choices we have and where can we start to have some action. So this is where it was very helpful, because you come to the idea of obsessive impatience, and that's where you say at the end of the day, we need to have some action happening, and we need to get very passionate about what that action is, and we need to have some timelines and make sure things happen. So for the sake of time, I'm just going to recap idea number 3, that the mindset was obsessive impatience. The big idea was becoming a chief excitement officer. it starts with you, right? So you have to be excited first about whatever it is that you want to initiate. Communicate the case for change, similar to what we were just talking about, leveraging those exponential value moments. Maybe you can schedule the meeting, that becomes the moment, or maybe you are invited to a meeting and you're going to speak about that initiative. So at the end of the day, we need to think about the fact that as leaders, we actually create a lot of change. So we need to be aware of that and then come back with a change leadership communication strategy where you understand, similar to what you were just saying, I need to explain to them what our choices are and develop a timeline where you're going to talk to them in 2 weeks, you're going to talk to them in a month, you're going to talk to them in 2 months. So it's actually more of a campaign of communicating and touching point with them and sharing those exciting moments with them. And talking about what those challenges are going to be. So I want to take us back to where we started. If I can go back to the thumbnails, let's see here. All the way at the top, when we basically looked at the top 3 mindsets that we wanted to talk about. I think I can take this all the way to the top right here. So we are walking away with 3 mindsets. If it's to be, it's up to me. And I think I said at the beginning, I said, if you just take this one, it's going to give you a major uplift in performance, because that means you'll be proactively taking action. The second mindset is there is an abundant potential. There's an abundant potential here at ABInbev already. How can we unlock that potential? And then the third one is having that obsessive impatience and becoming a chief excitement officer, finding these sources of excitement, thinking about what Carlos said about the insurgent mindset, what that means for us to really think about reinventing the business and being the people that initiate that action, and think about yourself as a leader and understanding that you're creating change most of the time and you want to be conscious of that and leverage empathy to talk to your teams and make sure that you understand what they also are going through. And remember the positive core. There's a lot of goodness already. How can you build on it? That's really a big part of what we talked about. And then Vlas, I'm going to stop here and give you the floor. Thank you so much.
All right. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right, awesome.
Yes.
Ash, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a really interesting, really great presentation to share those 3 presentations and those 3 mindsets to us. So thank you so much for joining. This is all the time that we have allocated today.